Alright, what's up guys? Daniel here, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the difference between a shaky head and a Ned rig. First, I'm going to discuss how you actually fish both of these lures. You don't just pick up your rod, chuck it out, and start hopping it along the bottom. There's very specific ways to fish both of these lures, and I'm going to discuss the true differences. Second, I'm going to talk about the situations in which I would fish a shaky head versus a Ned rig. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the setups of which I use for my shaky head and for my Ned rig. They're pretty similar, but there's some key differences that definitely help me catch a few more fish. Alright, so starting off with the shaky head, I'm sure most of you guys have already fished the shaky head a lot. As you can see, it's a really good looking little bait. Obviously, this is a smaller head. It's actually a 1/16 ounce, and it can be a really good finesse bait, especially when you're starting to use those smaller heads. So when I'm fishing this lure, I'm casting it out, and whether it be a dock, brush pile, etc., I'm casting it out, and the main way you're going to be attracting bites with this lure is by casting it out, letting that weight hit the bottom and shaking it. So you want to have your rod tip straight up in the air, not straight up, but at probably a 45-degree angle or a little bit taller, and you want to be shaking it. You can have a slack line or you can have a tight line, but the idea is that you want to cast that lure out and have your rod tip up in the air and shake that lure. And what's going to happen is when you're shaking that lure, whether it be slack or tight line, that weight is going to be on the bottom of the shore, whatever you're casting on, and it's going to be hopping up and down, hop, and that tail is going to be wagging all over the place, whacking like a dog. It's going to be shaking all over the place. It's going to be, fluttering. It's going to look really good. And that action of the tail is what's going to draw most of your strikes. Whether it be a fish that is really pressured and it's just really looking for that type of action, or it's going to be a fish that's going to nose up to it. You're going to be shaking it around. You're going to stop. All of a sudden you start shaking it again, and it's going to be a reaction bite. That's what those fish are looking after. So you're going to be hopping that lure, shaking it, creating as much action as you can with that small finesse worm. And that's how you're going to be getting those bites and how you're going to be fishing the shaky head, aka the name Shaky Head. You're going to be shaking it. All right, so we're going to switch over now to the Ned rig, which is a little bit of a different situation. The Ned rig has caught fire here within the past year or two, and a lot of people don't know the true differences on how you should fish this versus the shaky head. You don't throw it out there and hop it just like the shaky head. It won't work the same. It's not designed to be like that. And so I'm going to explain how you'd actually fish this right now. So as you can see, the Ned rig right here, very good looking little bait, but it's much smaller than the shaky head. So you're going to be throwing it for very pressured fish. It's going to be a finesse presentation. It's ideal for spotted bass and for smallmouth as well as very finicky largemouth. So when you're fishing the Ned rig, a common misconception is you're going to throw this bait out and jump it up and down along the bottom like a shaky head, which is not going to work the same for you. What you really need to do is cast it all the way out, and whatever you're on, whether it be a point, a bare bank, etc., you're going to cast it all the way out, and there's two different ways to fish it. The first way is you're going to have your rod tip again at a 45-degree angle or higher, and you're going to cast it out, and on a tight line, slowly reel that bait in. You want to feel every rock, every crevice, every tree stump, branch, anything you hit. You want to slowly reel it and feel it, right? That bite you're going to get on that slow retrieve is either going to feel just like weight on your lure, or it's going to feel like a little thump, and that's all you're going to get. On the Ned rig, you're not usually getting that rock solid bite how you could get on an oversized worm or a jig. So when you're casting it out there, you want to just slowly retrieve that bait towards you along the ground, and it's a really finesse presentation. Right? The second way you're going to fish it is you're going to cast it out again, have your rod up at a 45-degree angle or so, and you're going to lift that rod tip all the way up and drag that bait with a tight line all the way towards you until you get all the way straight up and down, and then you're going to reel down the slack until you're tight again, and then lift it all the way up and drag that bait to you again. Reel down your slack and repeat. So you're gonna lift up, reel, lift up, reel. And so essentially, instead of the steady retrieve, which you were just doing in the last technique with your rod at a 45-degree angle, slowly reeling, you're gonna be doing retrieve, stop, reel in your slack, and then retrieve, stop, reel in your slack. So both of these techniques, you're just reeling that lure extremely slow along the ground. You're not hopping it, you're not, shaking it very violently. That's for the shaky head. That's for the fish that are a little bit more aggressive but still looking for a finesse bait. This bait is all finesse. Either you can dead stick it, or you can give it a little bit of action. And for me, reeling it extremely slow and having this little tail gives it all the action I need. And so that's the key difference when you're fishing these two baits. Don't make the mistake of fishing it like a shaky head, because it's not meant to be fished like that, and it has a completely different action. All right, so now I'll go ahead and talk about the situations in which I'm gonna fish a shaky head versus a Ned rig. So with the shaky head, it's extremely versatile because of this big hook. So this big hook can be wedged into the worm's body, and that creates it, basically it's weedless. You're still gonna get hung up a little bit, you're still gonna get snagged every once in a while, but having that hook concealed into the body is really helpful. All right. So when I'm fishing this, I'm gonna fish it on docks, I'm gonna fish it on brush piles. I can basically fish it anywhere you want. Generally, the water depth I'm gonna fish it in is gonna be between as shallow as you wanna go, 1 foot, 2 foot, all the way down to 25 feet or so. A lot of people, when they're fishing deep brush piles during the summer, they'll throw on an oversized shaky head and a big worm and go fish it the same way you'd fish a smaller finesse shaky head setup as well. So you can fish it in any water depth you really want to, and I prefer to throw it around docks, brush piles, and points, rocky points, maybe some shore that has a lot of brush mixed in on it, and where you couldn't throw a traditional crankbait or some type of bait with tons of treble hooks that's going to snag up a lot easier. That's when this bait excels. So the situations I would throw a Ned rig in vary a lot more than the shaky head, right? So you have to be conscious that the Ned rig, is a smaller finesse bait, so you can't throw it in waters that are extremely dirty or require a very, loud presentation to get the attention of bass. This is more of a clear water lure. And it can be dirty as well, just depending on the correct situation. But to me, it's more of a clear water finesse bait. You also have to keep in mind, this has an exposed hook, and so that's gonna limit you a little bit on where you can throw it. You can't throw it in the middle of a brush pile like you could a shaky head, because on a shaky head, the hook is submerged into the worm's body, so it essentially is weedless. This one, the hook is wide open, and so you gotta be careful of that. I prefer to throw this around docks, and docks are still really good. You can still skip this bait depending on what head size you go with. I can skip this bait all the way in the back of docks, and as long as I get my clear casting line and I know I'm not wrapped around pilings, I can skip it anywhere and feel very confident that I'm not going to get snagged. I can also throw this on bare shorelines. A lot of people, I've heard, it's a technique out there when they're going from spot to spot, even from dock to dock, and there's a bare shoreline and it seems to be that nothing's there. They'll take this lure, bomb cast it all the way out, and slowly reel it back to them while they're going from dock to dock or heading to their next spot. And there's cruising bass in those areas, and because the bass are going from spot to spot as well, and those bass will see this lure just nosing along into the ground, and they'll come up and nip it right there and just take off with it. And that's a way that a lot of people actually fish this. One of my main ways that I fish it besides docks is also rocky points. On a lot of the lakes we fish, a lot of fish are always on points, and especially the rocky ones with the larger size boulders and a little bit of brush and stuff mixed in there. And after fishing this lure for a while, I really can tell whether I'm touching brush or rock, etc., and my snags have decreased. It's one of those things that as you throw this lure more and you get more confident with it, you'll throw it into sketchier situations because you have the confidence to know, all right, I'm bumping into, you know, wood right now. Let's not set the hook. Let's slowly drag that over it, or let me give it a pop or two and I know I can get it out. So rocky points, definitely one of my go-tos, especially for you guys on those clear lake reservoirs where there's a lot of smallmouth, and those smallmouth will end up schooling on those rocky points. If they haven't quite gotten to the point where they're on top water yet, this could be the killer, you know, the difference between waiting for them to have to school up and start hitting top water and getting them fired up with this before they end up, you know, hitting top water as well a little bit later. So finally, I'm going to talk about the gear setups that I use for fishing each one of these. Like I specified earlier, the setups are a little bit different. I prefer to throw both on a spinning rod. I know a lot of you bait caster guys out there are going to absolutely hate that, but that's what I prefer to do. If you get a heavier head on either one of these, then you could technically throw it on a bait caster, but for me, the way I fish, I prefer a spinning rod, and my hookup ratios are still really good with both of these setups. All right, so first we're going to start with the Shaky Head. Right now I have a 1/16 ounce head on there with a robo worm. Robo worms are one of my go-to finesse worms. They have a really soft body. Their color combos are awesome. It's a staple in my tackle box, and I'm sure in most of your tackle boxes as well. And I'm also pairing that with an owner Shaky Head. This is the standard owner Shaky Head, but they make sizes all the way up to at least a 1/4 ounce. And I saw that they just released their magnum size Shaky Heads. Don't quote me on that, but I did see that they were releasing a larger series on Tackle Warehouse that you could pre-order right now. All right, I love my owner Shaky Heads. I've gone through a lot of heads, and this is the one that works for me because it has a screw lock, and that's what I prefer. But I know a lot of you guys are going to prefer different heads. That's all good. This is just what's worked for me. Going to the line, I always use fluorocarbon. You want the least amount of stretch, and I use Sunline FC Sniper. My line varies anywhere between 8 to 12 pounds. 8 pounds is generally my sweet spot. I feel very confident with 8 and that it won't snap. I can get those fish wrapped up a little bit in pilings underneath docks, or, you know, get them wrapped up in a brush pile, and I can still get them out. I got to baby them, but I can still do it. That's just due to Sunline's really good strength. After fishing with them a lot, I have a lot of confidence, and it also has to do with I'm fishing clear water, clear bodies of water, and so I'm going to go as light as I can. And 8's the lightest I'm going to go with that I feel I can get a really good hook set with. Again, you can go up to 12 if the water's dirtier. It just all depends. The braid I'm using on this is Sunline as well. It's the X Plasma braid. I just started using it. My good friend John gave me a spool of this as well as the other braid, and I've just started using it within the past 2 weeks. So far, I love it. It's really good. I'll be interested to see how the color holds up, but for the pound braid that I'm using, I generally use 12. 12 on my spinning rods is my go-to. I'll go all the way up to 15 depending on the situation, but so far I haven't had any problems with 12 busting out on me, and that's what I'm going to stick with until I need a change, or just it works. So hopefully don't need a switch. The rod setup I'm using is obviously a spinning rod. It's a Dobyns Champion Series spinning rod. Dobyns makes extremely good rods, and this is one of their higher end rods that has a ton of sensitivity. When I'm fishing a Shaky Head, I want to feel the bottom. I want to feel everything that I'm bumping up against to. So I know if it's a rock, if it's the piling on the dock, or if it's a fish. So the Champion Series is really good. They also have the Fury Series, which is the next rod I'm going to show you. It's a little bit cheaper, and they both do an extremely good job. This one is a medium fast action. It's a 7-foot. It's worked for me. You could go as low as a 6'8", or even higher than a 7-foot. It's all preference, but 7-foot for me seems to be the sweet spot. Seems to work out well. And I've also got it paired with a Stratic CI4. This reel is buttery smooth. I absolutely love it. Like I said, this is my nicest combo. So I absolutely love putting it in my hands and feeling how light it is. You know, it's just, the setup's awesome. I don't have anything bad to say. And that's my Shaky Head setup. Hopefully you guys can, you know, compare to it and use something very similar, or if you had any questions, that'll answer some. And if we move on to the Ned rig setup, it's very similar. All right, so the Ned head, the jig head I'm using is a Z-Man HD Ned jig head. The HD is something that I played around with. So they make a traditional basic Ned head, and then they make an HD version with a heavier wire hook. I had some bad experiences with the lighter wire hook, the standard head that they make, and I've heard some horror stories about it as well. So I opted to go with the HD version with the heavier hook, and I have not regretted it. My hook sets are still extremely good. I don't have to worry about penetrating the fish's mouth with that big hook. Every single time it goes right in them, really easy. So that's never anything I have to worry about. And once I do get them hooked, I know that tough hook on there is going to keep them pinned. The size head I have on here is a 1/10. For whatever reason, I know it's an odd weight, but the fall rate of a 1/10 seems to be awesome. Everybody else I've talked to really likes the 1/10 as well. So if you're new to fishing the Ned baits, definitely try a 1/10 size head. It's a good starting point, and you can adjust from there. The bait on here is awesome. I don't know if you guys saw it pretty close in the video earlier, but it's a Missile Baits Ned Bomb, and it's our version of our Ned bait, and it's got this little tail at the end. And a lot of traditional Ned baits are just a stick bait, and that's it. And you know what? When you're fishing a dead stick and you don't need any action, that's fine. But I noticed that this little tail gives it a lot more subtle action, and it's just enough action where it really intrigues the fish, but it doesn't spook them away like the crazy action of a shaky headworm. All right, so if you haven't checked out the Missile Baits Ned Bomb, this is killer. This is baby bass color right here. It's been my new hot color, but they just came out with a ton of new colors, so I'm still working my way through them all. Again, for the fluorocarbon, I'm using FC Sniper. This is 8-pound as well, but you can go anywhere from 6 to 10 pounds. I used 6 the other weekend, and it was absolutely awesome. Didn't have one problem with it. I was fishing an extremely clear body of water, and that's why I went down to 6, but you can go all the way up to 10. Again, it's going to depend on the body of water you're fishing and what you prefer, but you can still get a really good hook set with 6 pound and not have to worry about it with this bait. The braid on this is the PEX8, and that's one of Sunline's new braids as well. The diameter is crazy thin. It's another braid I'm testing out, and right now this is 12 pound. So far I love it. I haven't had any problems, but again, I'm still testing it out. I'm only 2 weeks into it, so in a couple months I'll let you guys know how the color holds up, and if the quality deteriorates 1 or 2 months in. But so far, absolutely love it. I've got a Daiwa Fuego on here, and for the price point of this reel, the drag is buttery smooth, awesome reel. I actually had a problem with it, and I dropped it off my counter a couple months ago actually, and I sent it out to Daiwa, and Daiwa sent me a brand new reel. So Daiwa's service, top notch, don't have any problems with them. And again, this is a Dobbin series rod. This is the Fury series. So this is, I think it's around $110, $120. If you guys are looking to step up into the $100 rod range, this is the rod for you. Tactical Bassin did a review on it about a year ago, I believe, and they said, unless you have a couple $100, stick with this rod. Save your money, this rod does it all, and that's what I've found as well. Most of my rods are these Fury series rods, and I absolutely love them. Can't speak highly enough about them, but this is my setup. This gets it done for me, and I absolutely love it. This is actually my drop shot rod, but again, I'd use the same type of rod as my Shaky Head, about a 7-foot medium action, and that would be my go-to. So hopefully that answers all your questions. If you guys do have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, please shout at me in the comments and I'll try to answer. And if you guys have any other video suggestions that I should try to do in the future, let me know, because I'm going to be trying to start creating some more content. So if you guys like this video or it was helpful at all, please like and give me a subscribe. I'm just starting out, so hopefully we can grow pretty quickly, and I'll see you guys soon.